So good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. And boy, are they colliding out there. Kids and culture, they're being challenged right now. The kids are, that's for sure. So, friends, before we get going, I want to just say thank you for tuning in. It means so much to me that you have taken the time to come to this podcast and tune in. I thank you for that. And if you like what you hear, send it out to your family and friends. We're building an audience. And the reason we're building an audience is because on a weekly basis, I am doing my very, very, very best to bring to you amazing people from all over the country, all over the world, really, to talk about things that are pertinent to kids and the importance of the responsibility we have as adults to lead our kids in the right direction. So that being said, it is such a joy and a pleasure to welcome to the Hamilton Review podcast today, Jim Loehr. He is a world-renowned performance psychologist. His science-based energy management training program has achieved world recognition. He has been all over the place, friends. He's been written up in the Harvard Business Review, Business Week, Fortune, Newsweek, Time, U.S. News and World Report. I could go on and on and on. He's also appeared on a lot of television shows, including CBS Evening News with Dan Rather, ABC Nightline with Ted Koppel, CBS Morning News, and the Oprah Winfrey Show. Amazing. So, Jim Loehr, I could go on and on your resume. You've done a lot of things. Let me just welcome you to the Hamilton Review.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you. Thank you.
It's really my pleasure, and I'm so honored to have you on my show. I can tell you that. So, Jim, before we get into some of the nuts and bolts about what actually performance psychology is and what you have to share about that, I'd like to back up, and I'd like to have my guest, to a degree, introduce themselves. Talk a little bit about your life, your background, where you grew up, things that you did as a kid, and what were the touch points in your life that actually brought you to your line of work, becoming an educational psychologist, and particularly a performance psychologist. If you could share that with us, that would be would be nice. So the microphone belongs to you, Jim.
So I was born and raised in Denver, and I spent 8 years in a Jesuit educational system, Regis High School and Regis University. And I came from a very religious background. My sister is a nun. My brother became a Jesuit priest, and then he left the Jesuits, but I have a pretty strong tradition in that. And I had a professor. My father was a petroleum and civil engineer, a very bright man, and he just kind of expected me to go into science. But I ran across one of my teachers in college was a brilliant psychologist, and I was very inspired to maybe apply. My father was quite upset that I would go into psychology because he thought it was kind of hocus pocus, science wasn't real. And but I think after he saw what I did, I think he was very happy with the kinds of rigor I brought to that study and to my profession. But I went on and got my master's and doctorate in psychology, and I specialize in community mental health, and that's what I thought I would be doing. And I very quickly I became a licensed psychologist in the state of Colorado. And shortly thereafter, I was offered a fairly big job as chief psychologist and executive director of something that was called the San Luis Valley Comprehensive Community Mental Health Center, which served the entire southern and central part of Colorado. It had 9 offices, covered 8,600 square miles, very large catchment area. We had a very large staff, multi-million-dollar operation. And I was able to, I mean, it was a very early in my career, so I was kind of stunned that I would get that responsibility, but I loved it. But in that catchment area was a college by the name of Adams State College, and I had a very it was very opportunistic for me to get to know a guy by the name of Dr. Joe Vigil. Joe Vigil is a legend in Olympic sports, and he is a track and field genius. And he trained runners, he trained all kinds of track and field athletes, but he is known for his ability to produce distance runners out of nowhere. And we became good friends. He got me running, and he would ask me incessantly, Jim, what can you tell me as a psychologist that would help me get more out of my athletes? And I looked at him like a deer in headlights, and I go, Joe, I have no clue. I don't have any idea. My whole career has been helping people who have mental health issues get a little healthier, but I don't know how to take kind of healthy people and make them extraordinary. I don't know how to do that. And then he kept pushing me, and I said, okay, Joe, I'll do a literature search, see what's out there. And this was, in the early 1970s, and there was virtually nothing, no schools, no anything you could go. And so we kind of got into this, the two of us, and I got so intoxicated by the idea. I'm an athlete. I've played sports my whole life. My father was basically a professional baseball player, and he was my coach for 9 years. I played baseball, basketball, and tennis all over the world. I love sport. And I thought, wait a minute, this might be an opportunity. I love doing new things to apply psychology, my profession, to performance and specifically sport. And so I made a very tough decision, and I resigned to a 23-member board of directors. They thought it was a ploy for more money, so they almost doubled my salary. And I said, no, 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 this is not a ploy for more money. I really want to apply psychology to performance and to sport. And they thought, oh my goodness, there is no such thing. And Loehr can't handle the stress. So I moved to Denver, set up a private practice right next to the University of Denver Sports Science Department. And very quickly, I had athletes coming in because it was a whole new specialty, but I realized I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. All I knew was psychology and mental health. So I thought, I need to go and learn, but there was no place to go. So at that time, Jimmy Connors was the dominant competitor. He was opening up a new tennis center just south of Fort Myers in a place called Sanibel Harbor. And the Jimmy Connors United States Tennis Center, and they were looking for someone to run the facility. And this guy by the name of Bob Davis, I called him and I said, listen, I'll run your facility, but I want to have unlimited access to Jimmy Connors' brain. I want to see what makes him tick. And he said, oh, that's no problem. Come on down. Let's just do it. Well, he didn't tell Jimmy. But I took all the videos, tried to have as much access as I could for 2 years. And I realized that if we all had to become Jimmy Connors to become great, we're going to have some real issues. It's probably not the template. So I began working with a lot of the athletes from the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy, which is in Bradenton, just up the road from Fort Myers. And Nick heard I was, getting ready to move on, and he said, listen, set your institute up here. You'll have unlimited access to all our players. There's 240 players. And you can set your institute, be the director of sports science and sports psychology for our academy. So I did, and I spent 6 years there, and I collected more data there. I'm a data guy. I love research. I love data. I still have boxes of data that I put telemetry on. And we had Andre Agassi, Monica Seles, David Wheaton, Martin Blackman. We had, we had the greatest, probably collection of incredible human beings. It was the greatest, most prolific period of player development probably anywhere in the world at that time.
Yeah.
And that was worth 2 or 3 PhDs for me. I mean, that's where I learned everything. And then I was very grateful for that opportunity. And then I joined forces. I decided to do something on my own.
So let me interrupt you for 1 second. So what kind of data were you putting together? What kind of examples of, you're talking about a lot of data and a lot of information. What were you monitoring? Were you monitoring heart rate, or physical things, blood pressure, things like that? Were you monitoring energy levels, or calories expended, or what kind of things were you actually looking at? What
So
parameters?
I did a lot of work with video, combining video with heart rate data. And I had, the ability to, we did EEG, electromyographic recordings. We did EEG. It was not nearly as precise as we liked, but we collected a ton of data. We actually had a computer system at that time designed to help with each person find out what their ideal range of heart rate was when they were performing at their best, synchronized to match charting data. And that gave me a whole new understanding of the importance of the between point time in tennis, how to regulate physiology in that 25 seconds or 20 seconds between points. I developed a number of training protocols that are practiced all over the world. It's called the 16-second cure at that time. But that, I tried to, we had a lot of data. You have world rankings, you have all kinds of concrete outcomes that help you determine whether the interventions you are bringing are actually getting positive results.
Hmm.
And I love sport because you have, you really have very clear outcome data that help you determine that. So if they're winning more because they're more precise between points. For me, my favorite form of feedback was video, because no one believed that they ever did this or did that. And then you'd show them, and then we not only work with the biomechanical issues, but you couldn't tell anything from just looking at the during point time in tennis, um, about how strong mentally they were or not. But all the between point time was so rich, you could tell whether they were focused, if they had emotional control issues, if they were really caught up with nerves and everything else. So it kind of opened up a whole new understanding for me of how to look at a tennis match. I don't look at a tennis match the way most people do. It's a very different kind of, and I've worked with so many of the best players in the world, from Novak Djokovic all the way to all the current players today. I've had an incredible opportunity to work with what I believe are my teachers, because I've had so many opportunities to learn from them.
Yeah. Wow. So you're talking about, when you say during point, you're talking about the time between a point is made and a new serve is delivered. Is that what you're talking about?
During point time is when the ball is in the air and the point is being played. And the between point time, as soon as the point is over, they have 20 to 25 seconds, depending upon where they are in the world and what era that was. You had a certain number of seconds to prepare yourself for the next point.
Yeah.
And then you have changeovers. We videotape changeovers. We do video, pretty much every aspect of competitive play on the tennis court. Then we took that understanding into professional hockey. We took it into golf. I mean, later on at the Human Performance Institute.
Yeah. So you actually founded this thing called the Human Performance Institute down there in Florida. And so at that point in time, you were working with not only tennis, but you were working, you say you branched out to hockey and other aspects of sporting. Does that include basketball and baseball as well?
It included, yeah, just about all the sports. My co-founder was Dr. Jack Groppel, who had his PhD in bioengineering, and we wanted to set up a science-based approach to our mission was to help individuals and teams perform to the highest level possible in extreme or high stress environments, with one caveat, without compromising their health or their happiness. Because we learned that once health and happiness is compromised, the whole thing comes crashing down. So we started the institute, and we eventually sold the institute to Johnson and Johnson in 2008. I stayed on another 6 years. We probably had 300,000. It was a very, very successful financial endeavor, and we had everything from military special forces, Navy SEALs, FBI anti-terrorist units. We had Blue Angels precision flying team. We had 17 number ones in the world training there. We had sumo wrestlers coming all the way from Japan who spent 6 months with us. We had world-class chess champions. It was a living laboratory. Race car teams, race car drivers, entire hockey teams. It was a living laboratory, the likes of which no one has ever seen. But the faculty was the greatest faculty I could ever imagine assembled. We had the former commander of the Blue Angels, the former commander of the Navy SEALs, Admiral Ray Smith, an elite instructor from the Air Force Academy and fighter pilot. We had people like Dan Jansen, who was a gold medalist, Paul Wiley, who was a silver medalist. They became instructors.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so it was quite a place, and I miss it dearly. I wish I had never sold it because it was the greatest opportunity. I love data. The moment you walked in, we took your blood. Even in voluntaries, we looked at things like cortisol levels and everything else. But at the Human Performance Institute, we did a blood chemistry panel. We put you in a bod pod, measured your lean body mass. We had all kinds of metrics that we used. We looked at you at 90 days after you went through the training, 180 days, and then in 5 years, if we were able to spend that much time in the trenches with you. So it really helped us to, I think, develop more refined protocols for intervening in people's lives, and we changed a lot of lives. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity I had.
I mean, Jim, this is you rubbed shoulders with some of the most amazing people in the entire country, and I have to say I'm jealous. I just listening to these names that you're kind of sharing here. It's amazing. And did you guys have like a thesis? Was there something that you would share with these athletes when they were out there? You were collecting data, of course, but you obviously were imparting into them ideas and ways of doing things. Can you just, I know, listen, you probably have, you wrote 19 books. I know that maybe I have to read all 19 of your books to really have that question answered. But could you give us a couple, just for the listeners, a couple of thoughts about what were the things that you were sharing with these athletes, these extreme people that extremely gifted and accomplished people that you're dealing with?
So, as a science-based approach, we believe that all of chemistry and physics and all science is basically around energy. It's about the impact of energy and the dynamics of energy. And so Jack Roppel, who had his PhD in bioengineering, we decided that the most important construct in our training system would be the notion of managing energy. And energy in the human species, as you know well, comes from the mitochondria of the cells. And all cells, except red blood cells, have these little energy production plants that fundamentally, it's called the Krebs cycle, that the union of oxygen and glucose fundamentally produces energy. And what we have to do is to understand where energy comes from, how to manage it. And managing energy it's not just one dimension. All the energy comes from the cells of the body, but there is, just as the universe has quantity of energy, quality of energy, focus of energy, and intensity or force of energy. And we developed a whole system of training around that that integrated directly into how they were training as elite athletes. And it struck a chord with them. It's very practical. So we had exercise physiologists, nutritionists, massage therapists who, well, did a lot of hard work with the physical side to try to, and then we worked with everything from oxygen transport, try to help them understand how to build more capacity in their ability to expend and recover energy as quickly as possible in whatever time they had. That was probably our biggest contribution in special forces, was helping them understand how to maximize the mechanisms of recovery. They all push hard, but they don't really, they understand stress, but they don't understand recovery in the way we did.
Yeah.
And recovery, stress and recovery balance is the key to being able to be at your best. And so we brought that understanding, balancing. Someone like Dan Jansen went through the program for the Olympic speed skater, went through the program for 2 years, and we monitored his stress and recovery every single day in a log. And he went on and won an Olympic gold medal in an event that he had come in 26 2 years earlier at
Wow.
Albertville. So, I mean, there were some pretty amazing results when people get connected to their bodies and how we are fundamentally energy creatures. And if we understand how to use that energy in not some woo-woo way, but completely consistent with everything we know about hard science in terms of how the body produces, how it recovers, and how you can invest energy and what happens when you do. So those were the primary principles that we used at the Institute.
So when you talk about recovery, one of the things that I talk about a lot on the show is sleeping. I'm a big advocate for children sleeping. Just a real quick, this is an aside to a degree, but I'm curious to know what you think about that.
Well, the single most important mechanism of recovery we found at the Institute was sleep. Anything that disrupts the sleep cycle, we are basically waves of energy. Waves of energy expenditure followed by waves of energy recovery.
Yeah.
And the most powerful wave of recovery is the sleep wave. And if you compromise that, it disrupts the entire system. So if you're trying to reach a peak level at peak times, it's called periodization. You really have to understand the importance of the sleep cycle. And with kids today, which is my number one issue, helping them to understand how to prioritize this issue of sleep in their life. A lot of young people love to spend all kinds of hours in the late evenings and early mornings and want to sleep late. And, we had to change the rhythms of a lot of our athletes because they were not in sync with what the world actually, their competitive world. And I really feel like the science of sleep and the importance of sleep in everything from immune function to learning and to understand how the brain functions and its acquisition of new understandings and new mindsets. We found that if we couldn't get the person sleeping well, we came to a place where we couldn't get them to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think that's true with children even more so. So parents, sometimes they don't really recognize the importance of sleep in their children. They don't know how to get them to sleep. And so we develop rituals, very precise rituals, that the body loves routines. And if you get people into good routines, the body takes over. And when you get out of those routines, chaos often follows. And that chaos reverberates around all the system, the endocrine system, as you know, as a physician, and all the different biomarkers of the human physiology, the oscillation frequency of the brain, EEG, and everything else, the levels of the spike levels of cortisol and all those adrenal cortical hormones. we followed all that data, and you could see if people don't sleep well, their eye-hand coordination, their ability to read patterns, it deteriorates. And it's the same thing if school-age kids in the schoolroom. So I'm a big proponent of recovery, and the window of recovery that's most important is sleep.
Yeah. Well, that's what you put a little bit of information under my what I tell people. I say, listen, your kid, especially when they're in high school, they're growing and at a crazy rate. They're metabolically on fire, really, and actually all through childhood, they're on fire metabolically. They're growing and running around, doing different things. But definitely in high school, there's this lack of unfortunately, a lot of kids don't get enough sleep, Jim. And this is one of the things I say. I tell people, 9 hours a night, and they look at me like, you got to be kidding me. You're talking about going to bed at 9 o'clock and waking up at 6 o'clock. I go, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So it's a tough sell, but that's one of the big things I tell my patients all the time. I want to ask you. There's something that you wrote a book that is entitled "Leading with Character." Your subtitle was "10 Minutes a Day to a Brilliant Legacy," and you contend that character strength can be built in the same way that muscle strength is built through energy investment. And this is something that character is a big part of the show. We talk about character and a lot. But I'm curious because you haven't mentioned character in the conversation we've had thus far, but this is a big issue for you. And can you maybe break that apart and share with us your thoughts about what is character? First of all, maybe define it, and tell us how you can exercise that muscle of character to make it stronger.
So I have to pinch myself as a psychologist. Nothing in my training even touched that. Was the realm, character was in the realm of philosophy and religion. And so when I think about, of the last three books I've written, two of them were specifically devoted to this issue of character. And the reason I got there is the data led me there. And I had to continue to go back and look and look and look and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? There's something that is almost an intangible. I called it a hidden scorecard that actually took us right to the heart of what I would call ethical and moral character, which shocked me because I never intended to ever get in that space as a psychologist.
Well, Jim, don't forget you had 8 years of Jesuit knowledge behind you, education.
Well, but I didn't think it was going to lead me back there.
So the science actually led you back to some of your root what these priests were sharing with you way back when. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is kind of an interesting circle that I ended up coming back to. And we define character as it's something that is an acquired competency, very much like emotional intelligence or anything else in life. You have to work to develop their assets that help you navigate in life. And we divided character into two parts. One was what we call performance character, and these were all the assets that help you to achieve great things in life, like focus and all the things that discipline and positivity and all the things that you think about that athletes have to possess. And so we identified 25 of them, and we were always trying to build those, being able to focus in the moment, being able to, be disciplined enough to follow the routines, to be able to um, get yourself to follow routines on a regular basis, habituate what was important, and so on and so forth. And issues like positivity, the ability to reset quickly, resilience, and all these are all acquired competencies in the performance arena. If you don't have those, you can't be a great performer.
Yeah.
But that didn't tell the whole story. And then we began to realize there's something that actually is even more important than those assets that help you perform better in competitive arenas or achievement to achieve great things. And we called it the moral and ethical character assets. And they also are learned. And these pertain to your ability, your competency in how you treat other people. And this led us into issues like integrity and honesty, issues like um, your ability to care for others, your ability to understand, that the world may be much bigger than you, and maybe it's not all about you. Issues of humility, issues of, just the ability to um, really take a good close look at who you really are and the way in which you interact with other people,
Yeah.
your treatment of others. So, this golden rule, treat others the way you wish to be treated, that does not seem to be a performance enhancing, um, dynamic. And so, what we learned, and everyone knows this, there are many ways to summit the mountain. You can walk over dead bodies, you can treat people badly, and you can get to the top. You can cheat, you can take illegal drugs, you can do whatever you want. And if you don't get caught, you're a hero. But what we learned was there's something missing inside of us. I took it all the way back to our earliest beginnings as a species, that the way we survived, we are social creatures. And in man's ability to survive, we had to depend on others. We had to trust others. We had to care for others when they were sick. And when people didn't have food, we had to share what we had so that we all could survive. And dishonesty or disrespect or violence or to our own was really prohibited. And people who went off on their own often didn't make it because we needed a village to support the survival of our village, or ultimately much larger tribes and so forth.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
Our communities in general. Yes. I mean, I think this is such a critical thing. And I want to comment on that in a second, but I'll let you finish here. Go ahead.
yeah, so we found it. I called it the hidden scorecard. That even though you summited, you have this deep feeling that you really haven't really done it. Maybe you want to have 5 gold medals to feel good because you don't feel right about yourself. There's this haunting sense that you've missed life. Is this all there is? That I've spent my whole life achieving, but I have devastated the lives of many other people in the chase. And so we developed this notion that we all have a scorecard. That scorecard is always being checked, and it is traceable all the way back to our earliest ancestors. And I think it's very real. And that if you want to have a fulfilling and deeply satisfying life, I wrote a book, The Only Way to Win. The only way to win is to win with character in terms of how you reach the summit. More important than summiting is who you become as a person in your chase to the top.
Yeah.
And that's where happiness, fulfillment, and we found that that's where sustained success comes from. You might be a flash in the pan, but people quickly know or will begin to realize you compromised your ethics and who you were as a person to get there. And they don't want you to be on top for very long. They don't have that respect for you. And we want someone that we actually hold in high regard because of the way they handle themselves, and more importantly, the way they treat others. They have integrity, they have honesty,
Yeah.
they have a sense of perspective about who they are, and they have a great sense of humility along with confidence.
I'm not sure if you ever were able to measure this, but when your foe gets knocked down, I think about football, and you make a tackle. it seems, there's a tendency, and I watch football games and I see these guys, they tackle a guy and they jump up and down, they made the tackle and everything. But there's also some guys who actually reach down and pull the guy up, into a stand. You know what I'm talking about? And you
Exactly.
I look at that as being a point of, when you have a foe, you're playing football, you obviously want to win the game. And you tackle the guy, you're glad you tackled the guy, but there's a sense of great humility when you actually reach down and help that guy to his feet. Did you ever comment about that and tell people, hey, listen, when the guy falls down, you pick him up? Did you guys talk about that?
Well, we talk about who do you want to be as a competitor? How do you want to go through this chapter or several chapters of your life? Who do you want to be? You want to be a very focused. How do you want people to remember you? So we take people to the end of their life, and I call it the tombstone exercise, and ask them to carve in stone what is it that are the most important things that they want to leave behind in their sport or with their family or anything else. These would be the most important markers of true success in their life. And they would spend a good bit of time, and they could put like 6 words or 2 short sentences, but that's about it. And these became what I call getting home in life.
Yeah.
And very rare, no one ever put on there, I won 3 Super Bowls or I had 4 gold medals, or that does not make the cut on the tombstone. What made the cut was their interaction with other people. I made a difference. I really inspired others. I did it in a way that made my teammates better. I felt like I gave more than I received myself, and honor might be humility, integrity, on whatever it is you carve there. Those are the true indicators of success for you. That's the ultimate success marker for you. Then we work backwards all the way to the game tomorrow night. And how are you going to earn those? You have to work at those to get them. Those are not given just because you want them. Every single day you compete, every time you're with your family, every time you're on television or anything else, you have to earn those inscriptions on your tombstone. And if you don't work at it every day, it's just another crazy thing that'll never happen. So you get to choose what you want, but you're going to have to work at it every day.
Yeah.
And the things that they come up with shock everyone. And when I did it with large groups, they thought, oh my God, we've all copied from one another, because they all came up with similar things. And it took me back to this ethical and moral ground that actually is the most sacred ground we have as human beings. And if you don't have that right, you never have the sense that your life is on track completely. And then when you get to the end of your life, you'll feel like you may have missed it. And so we try to help people understand how that scorecard may be the most important scorecard they'll ever have for the rest of their life.
It's a powerful thought. It really is a powerful thought. So I'm curious. Okay, so you're talking to an audience today of mainly mothers and some fathers, grandparents. They have kids, and as you know, my subtitle of my show is "Where Kids and Culture Collide." What advice? And you have really done so much research. You've rubbed shoulders with some of the greatest athletes, certainly in our country. Just your thoughts about raising children. What are the things that are important when you are in that process of raising children? Because raising children is not easy. This is a lot of work, and I know you have kids. You remember. So, just your thoughts and your recommendations from someone who's observed and analyzed and actually researched people who have broken through, I guess.
So I could spend hours on this, but I'll try to summarize what I believe are the most critical issues that I learned over many years. I wish I had known these when I was a parent in my early years with young people, with my own children. But this chapter in my life is devoted to what I started the Human Performance Institute with Dr. Jack Roppel. And now we have the Youth Performance Institute, which is applying all of the things that we learned there to what I believe is the most important population by far. And today, there is, I mean, I could put up stats about the youth today would absolutely shock pretty much anyone who's interested in knowing how our youth are struggling mightily today. And it's with cyberbullying and all kinds of ADHD and all kinds of issues that screen addiction, addiction to drugs. I mean, it's there is a very big challenge for parents to guide their kids through this minefield of things that because so many of the kids don't really see much of a future. They're lost. They don't really know where it's all headed. Many of them have a very pessimistic. We are doing all kinds of research with kids, and the more we unearth this and look at the worldwide data, the more convinced we become that we've got to do something pretty sensational in order to save a lot of these kids. In my own experience with my own kids, I can see the traumas and the difficulties in my grandchildren, what they're facing. And when COVID hit, they got very isolated. One of them had very serious acne and made them feel very self-conscious. And all these issues just made it extremely difficult for them to find happiness and feel like they're going to have a big success in their life. Most parents really look at their success as parents in terms of how high achieving their children are. We're trying to change that. That's not the issue. It's really helping them understand what kind of human being they are, how strong they are, how values based they are, a sense of purpose, and that they begin to realize that their life, this was a gift. And the more they give their life away to a cause bigger than themselves, the more they get a life. And all the principles that we learned in the character space apply most importantly to children.
Yeah.
This is what saves kids. So the issues that for me were the most important is that we learned in our high stress arena in our living lab that there is a voice that no one hears but you. It's that inner voice. I'm speaking to you with my public voice, and you're speaking with your public voice. But there is a voice that no one hears that is ultimately the master storyteller, is really in control of your destiny. And that voice is either a great asset in life or it literally becomes an anvil around the neck of the individual who has to carry because they're fighting two worlds. One, we learned this in sport. If you're fighting yourself and your opponent, you're not probably going to even come close to what you're capable of. So that inner voice is either we're trying to teach young people how to develop a repository of wisdom, and it requires a lot of hard work, a lot of synthesizing so that your private voice has a reference, whether or not I should do this or not do it. We wrote a whole book on wise decisions, and it really applies to parents and children. So that really, how do you get kids to make good decisions in life? Because that's one bad decision to drink and drive can alter the trajectory of their life forever.
So
And
true.
those people who they might
Yeah.
have interacted with. So the I would say maybe the biggest takeaway, or one of the takeaways that I would just leave with you and with your audience, is that the way you speak to your children, that we learn that the inner voice is really the accumulation of all the voices that they've heard in their family with siblings and parents, most importantly, authority figures, coaches. The way you speak to them and the wisdom you bring to them will one day be what resides in their head and the only voice they will have in their head until their death. And so, if you be very clear that is this the voice you're speaking to your son or daughter, is this how you want them speaking to them? And parents say, well, God, I tell them, what the hell's the matter with you? If I had your opportunities, I would have been a superstar. What's the matter with you? You're lazy, you're no good. You make me want to kick you out the door. I can't stand you at times. And you think, well, wait, is that the voice you want them really helping their guidance through life to navigate through the pitfalls of life with that kind of input. And we had to change the inner voice of thousands and thousands of people to align more with what they really wanted to be. They were proud of that we have this kind of test. Would you want your inner voice, whatever coaching we called you, it's your inner coach, projected onto a jumbotron when you're going through a tough time, and everyone in the world could see how you're coaching yourself? Would you be pleased? Would you be proud of how you coached yourself? The way you would coach yourself if it was someone you deeply cared about in the same situation. You change on a dime, and all of a sudden, this inner repository of wisdom starts forming. And when a parent realizes that's what's going to control the future, you can say anything. Your kids can say anything with their public voice, but it's their inner voice you're trying to get to. And that inner voice is either going to take them in a great direction or literally take them in a trajectory that could be absolutely traumatic for the rest of their life. And so we work very hard to get that inner voice right and helping them to manage their energy in ways that give them the energy they need to fight for the right things.
Wow. Well, listen, Jim, this has been a very fascinating conversation. I will tell you, I'm gonna get some of your books, and I'm gonna read your books, and I may need to have you back on the show because you're saying some very profound things. I think that one of the things that I think about a lot is purpose in life, and certainly that's part of this idea of character, building character. What is the purpose? Why are you doing what you're doing? I do think it does lead back to your Jesuit education, and of course the elephant in the room is God. God is part of this whole equation too. And why did God make you? What is so unique about you, and why are you who you are? I think that is a profound question. And when you begin to answer that question, you begin to realize maybe there's a purpose for my life, and begin to follow that purpose, whatever that may be. Well, listen, Jim Loehr, you're a very, very fascinating person. I would love to talk with you about some of the details of some of these amazing individuals that you ran across in your research out there in Florida. Thank you for doing what you did, and thank you for writing the books. Appreciate you, and my hope is that this conversation will be helpful to parents as they navigate parenting, as they raise the next generation, which is so critical, which I know that you think about a lot, and so do I. So thank you, Jim Loehr, for being on the Hamilton podcast.
So I would really like to commend you and encourage people to continue to, look at every avenue we can to help kids and culture collide and to understand what can be done to help our future generation to navigate the storms that they're in. It's a very different world than I was in, than you were in, and that probably these parents are in. And we have a lot of ability to change course once we understand. And I'm committed for whatever time I have left to try to contribute to parents, teachers, and coaches to help them get their voice right so that the inner voice of these kids is really the best voice and the one they can rely on most to what we would refer to as getting home. And that is to live a life that really, really represents the pinnacle of their ability to connect with others and to treat others the way they want to be treated.
To that I say amen. And Jim, so thank you again for being on the Hamilton Review. You've been a wonderful guest.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. I appreciate being on, and good luck in all the future work. I admire what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And friends, those listening, I want to also say thank you to you for checking in and listening to this podcast. It's been a great conversation with Jim Loehr. Look him up. He's very much out there, and he's doing some amazing things. So, James, thank you for your contribution to goodness in this world.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
And with this, we're going to end this conversation. Thank you, friends, for tuning in to the Hamilton Review. Until next time, be well. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.